Welcome to the AVAIL Podcast, where we dig deep and talk about the art of leadership. My name is Virgil Sierra, your AVAIL Podcast host and lead pastor of Vertical Church, aka Iglesia Vertical in South Florida. Today, we are sitting down with Dana Gentry. Dana is owner and operator of Keller Williams Realty franchises. And today we're going to discuss her new book, Restore, 90 Days of Intentional Living in Life, Faith, and Business. So lean in, leaders, and let's get started. Dana, it's great to have you as a guest on the AVAIL Podcast. How are you feeling?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me. Oh my gosh, and I love your intro. So great.
You see that? You see that? I've been doing this for a little while. It's working out good.
I love it. And you have the ultimate podcast voice. It's
Come
so
on.
great.
Thank you, Dana. I already like you, Dana. We haven't even started the interview, and I already like you. Before we start talking about your new book, which I think is very exciting, tell us a little bit about yourself so our AVAIL audience can get to know you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm so looking forward to it and have been. I have been in the real estate space for 19 years now. Started off when I was in college. I actually am not a college graduate. I went to the University of Kentucky my sophomore year of college, decided to get my real estate license, went to school and did that. And I really just, was blessed to have a lot of success right out of the gate. And so because of that, I actually didn't end up going back and finishing school, which I used to be so embarrassed to tell people, by the way. And now I'm like, you know what? It's a part of who I am.
That's right.
And maybe it'll inspire somebody else who, doesn't want to go to college, but, no, college is great. But I had a really successful career in real estate, sold for about a solid decade. And then I got the opportunity to move into a leadership space inside of Keller Williams Realty, leading brokerages. We launched a new brokerage. We launched another new brokerage after that in Central Kentucky, in the Lexington, Kentucky area. And since then, really, Virgil, it's just kind of been a steady climb in leadership.
Yeah.
Stewarding the brokerages that I now own and operate to the best of my ability. Really feel called in the secular space. You and I kind of chatted about that pre-recording starting. And I think everybody has different unique abilities, different callings, different assignments in their life. And, while the faith is my absolute foundation, I love the business world and I love leaders and helping people grow. And so since then, just still trekking along, almost 20 years, and lead two brokerages in Kentucky and Ohio. We, run billion-dollar brokerages. We have a lot of market share, a lot of great agents, a lot of top agents, and really our values are God, family, then business. So it's a great organization, and we lead so many wonderful people.
Yeah, I love that. Even in just talking with you, I could sense a few things that stick out to me. One is faith is very important to you, your faith in God. And secondly, you have a passion for leadership, and you have a passion for connecting the sacred and the secular, which I think, by the way, I think is awesome. I think we need more of that. So I pray that your voice would continue to be amplified in God's will. Let's talk about your new book. How exciting is that? Your new book is coming. Depending on when people watch or hear this, it might already be out. So you got to check out for it. Yes. Restore, 90 Days of Intentional Living in Life, Faith, and Business. Why did you write this book?
Yes, great question. And it's so surreal to even be talking about it. I'm sure everyone says that on their first book.
Uh-huh.
I had a goal of writing a book, and I have been blessed to have been mentored by the John Maxwell for the last decade, and just look to John truly, really as almost a second father figure.
Wow.
He's just incredible. And I heard John say one time that the reason that he decided to become an author and write books is because he loved to make an impact, and he could impact a few in person or, in his day-to-day life, but he could impact the world with books. His reach to impact is so much larger when you write a book. And so I thought, okay, wow, and so, and then I think also a little bit of it is like, man, everybody's writing a book these days.
Sure.
So I'd always kind of had that on my list and never really felt like it was the right timing. And then in May of 2024, I don't know if I'm sure you've probably have experienced this. Hopefully I'm not the only one, but I just was having a day in leadership where I was like, I was burnt out. There was
Yeah.
so many demands and so many emails and so many texts and so many problems to solve, which, normally I can do that. But this day, particularly in May at last year, I was just like, man, it's just a lot. And I could
Yeah.
almost just feel in my spirit, okay, you need to take a breather today. You need to take a break. You need to unplug from it all. We are very blessed to live in a beautiful city of Mount Pleasant, Charleston, South Carolina. And so I canceled my calls, canceled my Zooms. I took a chair, my journal, and my phone so I could, have some worship music on. And I went out to the beach. And I just was like, I'm going to be still today. And, I really just needed to hear from the Lord, to be honest. And I think
Mm,
sometimes we get so busy in the day to day that, people always say, I need to hear from the Lord, or I never
yeah.
hear from the Lord. But I almost think it's like he's there, like, wait a minute, I'm here to talk to you. You just aren't slowing down enough to listen.
Mhm.
So I went to the beach that day, sat down, and it was like almost just an audible voice when I kind of got still and was really praying, like, Lord, what do you see for me in the next year? And how can I be a better leader? And, how can I serve you more? And just send me where you want me to go. And I audibly almost heard just, it's time to write your book. And I'm like, okay, well, now I'm going to do what any great Christian does, and that's challenge God. So I'm like, okay, God, well, if that's what you're saying, then what, while I'm here today, just stir in my spirit, give me the title, give me the, and it was
Mm,
like, I couldn't even get the prayer out, Virgil, before I heard restore. And to be honest, restore wasn't really a word that I use in my daily vocabulary. So I was like, restore, restore, so then I started looking up all the definitions of restore, and then biblically, what does restore mean? And God has restored so many people in the
oh yeah.
Bible. There's so many things that you can restore, but biblically, I'll actually read it to you. I have it. Biblically, really, when you look up the word restore, it means to receive back more than has been lost, to the point where the final state is greater than the original condition, to make something new again. And that's when I was like, wow, that's what the Lord has so sweetly done for me so many times in my life.
Wow.
Like, just restored so much so. So I started thinking that day about the restore concept, and I'm like making all these notes in my phone, and doing all these things. And then it was almost like the Lord has told me, you've been blessed to be around the right people and in so many great rooms. You've learned so much around intentionality specifically. So take that and help other people,
Mm.
that maybe haven't been in those rooms or haven't had access to those people, and share the stories. And so that's what the book is. It's 90 days of how you can be more intentional in your life, faith, and your business. And it correlates to a lot of just the lessons that I've learned and the people I've been able to learn from and be around over the last 2 decades.
I love that. I love hearing the story of how something kind of comes together.
Yeah.
And isn't it cool how God just speaks to us when we take the time to listen? I love that. I love that. I love that. So here's a question I have. Um, you say there are three pillars to being intentional, and you
Yes.
mentioned time, talents, treasures.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that thought for us a bit?
Yes, absolutely. So, I have found that a lot of people live life almost kind of drifting. And I always kind of say, even could be semi-successful and still drifting.
Mm,
It doesn't really mean you haven't made it yet. I mean, I speak to a lot of leaders who have what I would call a semi-successful or successful career, yet they really are still drifting. It's almost like they have that feeling of they're stuck, or they feel like there's more out there for them. And, after doing a lot of research, drifting really isn't laziness, which I think some people think that it can be. It's just motion without meaning. And I
mm.
heard John Maxwell say one time, I would love to take credit for this, but I can't, so I have to give it to him. But he said, no one drifts into intentionality. You default to things in the moment when you don't have intentionality.
Right.
And when I heard him say that, I was like, man, I'm doing that. For years in my life, I was successful and having some success, but I just really did not live intentionally. And I was drifting into things. And another thing that John has always taught me is you don't want to go to the next level, you want to grow to the next level.
Yep.
Because we all know people who are in positions and they didn't really grow into that position. They got into that position because maybe they had a family member or a parent or somebody, like they're in the role, but it's like, did they really grow to that position? And so when you think about those things and you really think about living an intentional life and not drifting, the main key areas are your time, your talent, and your treasures. We only have, all of us have 24 hours in a day, yet some people are more successful than others.
Right.
It's truly how they decide to live intentionally with their time. I mean, your time on earth that you are here to live out the assignments that God's called you to do. How are we stewarding it?
Right.
And there's a lot of things that people say, well, if you say yes to this, you're saying no to that. And sometimes that doesn't feel good, but it's really true. There's an equation, like a formula that I've lived by forever, and it's focused intensity over time multiplied by God equals unstoppable momentum. You probably have heard it.
I've heard it. Yeah.
But it's all over time. Well, it's all really multiplied by God. But before that, it's over time.
Sure.
And so if you aren't really being intentional with your time, you can continue to drift. You aren't going to live to the level of success or to the full assignment that you've been called to. And another thing I'll say on time really quick, Virgil, is, a lot of times I work with leaders, and I have been this leader, where they give no attention to their family or their health or, other things. It's like they get sucked up by the time, and their business is all consuming. And so I always say to people, God will never call you to build something that requires you to abandon your family or your health.
Right.
If that's happening, you are doing it wrong, or you are not aligned with your calling, because your business should be a blessing in your life. It shouldn't consume your life.
Right.
But if you're not intentional with your time, it can consume your life.
Yep. As you're talking, a lot of thoughts are going through my mind, especially because so many leaders lean into the AVAIL podcast, ministry leaders, church leaders, marketplace leaders, or people who are kind of leading in both as well. From your own life, can you share a story when investing intentional time in someone or something produced some unexpected fruit?
Yes, I can. Yes, I absolutely can. I have one that I share in my keynote when I go to teach about intentionality, but that comes to mind, so I'll share that one with you. So back in, well, let me back up. So Gary Keller, billionaire, founder of Keller Williams Real Estate, just an absolute, they say, the most influential person in real estate across the country. I didn't have I didn't really have a relationship with Gary. A couple of years ago, I've owned franchises and, but we have 180,000 people inside of Keller Williams. So not everybody gets access to Gary Keller.
Sure.
However, I did get invited in 2023, in the fall of 2023, to Gary's personal ranch in Austin, Texas. They invited the 50 top operators inside of KW. Gary wanted to spend time with them. And so we got an email to fly out. Well, my dad had just unexpectedly passed away the end of July that year. And it really, that could be a whole nother podcast. But,
wow.
It's like, I had a coach one time say to me, Dana, you can until you can't. Because I was like, I can do it all. And I can do all these things all the time. And she's like, you can until you can't. And I didn't really know what that meant until I lost my dad. And I mean, I had never really lost anybody. And it was so unexpected. And so, Virgil, I was like, man, for months, I just felt like I was, in another world.
Yeah.
It was quite an experience. I didn't really know what grief was until then. But I got invited to Gary's ranch personally, and it was right after my dad passed away. And I thought, I just don't know if I feel like going. And my husband's like, babe, you've worked years to get invited to you need to go. You need to intentionally make the time and go. And so I did. And crazy enough, Virgil, I was actually the only person out of all 50 people that showed up with a thank you gift. Maybe it's the Southern in me, but showed up with I've learned intentional gift giving over my life. So showed up with an intentional gift. And, spent some great time and got to spend some time with Gary. We were on his ranch, and I just happened to take this picture of his favorite animal called the oryx that's out on his ranch. I think they're from Africa. No clue how he has them on his ranch, but he does. And it looked like something out of National Geographic. So I got back home from the trip and had my assistant print out the picture and matted it, framed it, send it to Gary with a nice thank you note for having me. And was just really intentional with the time around going, around being there, coming back. So fast forward to Thanksgiving that year, 2003, just a couple years ago. And Thanksgiving was always the holiday that we did with my dad. So I said to my husband, I really just want it to be us. So he took me to one of the most beautiful places in the country, Highlands, North Carolina. And we spent Thanksgiving there. On Thanksgiving Day, I look down, Virgil, and I see an email from Gary Keller pop up on my phone. And I'm like, well, that has to be like spam or, some sort of newsletter or something. So I look at it, And it's a picture of the ranch, of the picture that I had framed for him with the
Mm.
oryx. And he said, Dana, I just wanted to say happy Thanksgiving. So thankful that you came into my life. Thankful that we had intentional, time together, and thankful for your life. Happy Thanksgiving. And I thought, okay, so then fast forward, and this year I was actually on stage with Gary at our convention talking about leadership for our operators and those things. So there was the fruit of some
Wow.
really intentional time
Yeah.
around a hard time in my life.
Yeah.
um, but it's being intentional with your time and your calendar and what you do with the time that you have.
That's really good. What's maybe a practical way, maybe even small, but a practical
Yeah.
way to reclaim time from distraction and invest it in what matters most?
Okay, this might be silly, but I mean, I live by it because I have it right here in front of me. I mean, I think a lot of leaders, if you aren't already, you need to go back to a 30-day at a glance paper calendar. I mean, what better way to be intentional with your time and how you live at? I don't know how leaders live without a 30-day at a glance paper calendar at all time. I mean, and I'm a millennial, I'm actually what they call a geriatric millennial, which I kind of find highly offensive. But it is what it is. So, I mean, of course, everything is in my phone calendar, but be intentional looking at it at a month in advance, at a month
Yeah.
at a glance for me. And it is a very simple daily practice of intentionality around your time, because for those leaders, especially, I know church leaders, business leaders, you're speaking at different churches in
Yeah.
different cities, doing things all the time. And unless you can really see it all, I mean, only way I can be as intentional as I am is through this. I mean, it's just it's a practical thing that's so easy.
That's really good. I like that. I like practical little tips like that, little handy things that you hear that are like, wait, that could help me. Another thing that you emphasize in your book is that every person has unique gifts that maybe only they can bring specifically in a specific context or situation.
Yeah, your talent.
How do you encourage people to recognize and lean into those talents?
Yeah, such a great question. I think sometimes it's almost easier for us to focus on the things that we're not good at
Right?
compared to the things that we are good at. When you really get in alignment with what you truly are your unique abilities are, your talents that God gave you. I always I go back to the parable of talents in Matthew 25, and what they did with with what God gave them.
Yeah.
One of them buried, and one of them multiplied, and one of them multiplied again. And it's like, what you do with your talents is so important. But to your question, how do you find your talents? To me, it's the things that actually give you energy. We do a lot of things that we might be great at, and even other people might say, man, like Virgil is the best of the best at that, or Dana is the best of the best at that.
Mm-hmm.
But if
Mm-hmm.
you don't feel like you could do that for the next 25 years, and when you do it, even though you're the best at it, it doesn't give you energy, it's probably not your talent.
Yep.
We do an exercise with my teams every year, actually a couple of times a year. I actually got it from Strategic Coaching, a guy named Dan Sullivan out of Canada who owns Strategic Coaching Foundation, but it's called the Unique Ability Assessment. And it's like you go down and list everything that you do throughout a 7-day time period in whatever role it is that you are in. And then you move those things into categories of, is it a competent, incompetent, excellent, or unique? And really, like, you can see you're unique. And another way, Virgil, I would say is, if you're struggling with it, send an email to 30 people that know you and care about you and say, what do you think are my God-given talents? And I guarantee you they will all be very similar.
That's
Their
good.
responses will be.
That's very good. And I think it is important to understand, I think another way of saying it sometimes is your sweet spot. Like when you're in your sweet spot and like you're saying you could do it for long periods of time and don't necessarily get tired of doing it and gives you energy as opposed to draining you. I love it. I want to switch a little bit gears, or actually, no. I want to stay on the talents and then we'll switch gears a
Okay.
little bit to another thing. But what does it look like to be intentional with your talents, and how has that opened unexpected doors in your personal or professional journey?
Yeah, great question. I feel like my talents are leading, building things, encouraging and connecting others. One of my life verses is Proverbs 11:25. Those who refresh will be refreshed, or those who refresh
Hmm.
others will be refreshed. I feel like those are kind of mine, and I just really It sounds crazy. I just think intentionally, well, I actually have it in my calendar. Like, did you multiply your talents today at the end of every day?
Hmm.
But I think it's just leading them out every single day. I mean, I teach a lot. I'm constantly trying to ask God to like give me a new vision because I love to build. I'm not a super great maintainer, but I love to build something. And so I don't know. I think I'm trying to think of an actual lesson or a way. I just think every day I try to live out
Yeah.
and in some way multiply my talents. I have a really good friend. His name's Taylor, and he wrote an awesome book called Parable for the Republic. And he said in his book, like he's a work every waking hour type of person. And whether it's like working your business, working your craft, working your discipleship or your relationships or your parenting or marriage or whatever that is, he always says like you must not squander a moment because anything less than exhausting a full use of your energies to multiply the talent that you have is spiritual suicide. And I'll
Mm.
never forget when I read that and when I heard him talk about that, because I do believe that. Sometimes I think I used to feel kind of guilty for being like, people would say, well, you just work all the time. And I'm like, I know, but I love it because
Yeah.
I'm going to multiply my talents. God gave me the talents that I have. And I never want to feel like I'm squandering a moment in those ever.
That's good. It's funny because as you're talking, and you said the word a little earlier, but what the word that really resonates with me in all of this conversation is stewardship, right? It's
Yeah.
we have to learn to steward these our time, our talents. Let's go to our treasures, right? You
Yeah.
write that giving isn't just about money; it's also about the heart behind generosity.
Yeah.
And why is this perspective important? Do you think?
Yeah, great question. I think one, you can never be outrageously generous when you're broke. So I have a kind of a trigger sometimes, and there's so many great people that have taught me so many things about wealth, including probably someone that through AVAIL. That's our friend Dave Martin.
That's right. Yes, sir. Yeah.
I mean, Creating Your Own Economy, one of the best books I've ever read about
Yeah.
being intentional with your treasures. Everyone, I know we're here to talk about my book, yeah, but everyone should read that book. It is so good. I absolutely love it so much. But I just think you can't be outrageously generous when you're broke. And
That's right.
also, you can't feel secure when life's unexpecteds happen when you're living paycheck to paycheck. So if you aren't intentional with your treasures, you're going to have that feeling of like either, you don't have freedom around your finances, or you can't give when you want to give. I have a goal. I always say this, but on the day that, I'm no longer on earth anymore, I don't really care if people say, oh, she ran these successful real estate brokerages or, she did all this other stuff. I want them to say like, man, Dana was the most generous person that I knew.
Mm,
And I don't ever want to be in a place where I can't say yes to something that I need to. But in order to do that, I have to be able to be intentional with my treasures. And so that's everything from setting goals around money to, paying off past debt and knowing what you need to live off your current lifestyle and then saving for the future and for tomorrow. So I think that there's a lot around this. Sometimes people kind of, fade out when you talk about money. Um,
yeah.
but as long as you have the right mindset around it, and this, I don't need to tell you this. You can probably speak way more knowledgeably and educationally around this than I can. But money is really the only time in the Bible I think that God actually says, "Test me."
Yes. Yes. Malachi
And
3.
yeah, so I mean, I take that pretty seriously.
Yeah.
If that's the one time that the Lord is saying, "Test me here," that we need to pay attention to that. So, a big way that I always encourage people to live intentionally with their treasures is to like pray certain things over your finances. I pray Isaiah 45 over finances a lot. I love, okay, now this one I don't have memorized, so I'm going to have to look it up and read it to you. But I love verses 2-3 in Isaiah 45. I will go before you and level the mountains. I will break down the gates of bronze and cut through bars of iron. I will give you hidden treasures, riches stored in secret places. Well, if we want that to happen and we want to be so outrageously generous, we got to live intentionally with our
That's
finances.
right. That's right. You know, I can't help but think as I'm hearing you talk because I feel like your eyes light up and your heart lights up when we're talking about all this.
Yeah.
What is your hope through your book, which is your first book, Restore 90 Days of Intentional Living in Life, Faith,
Yeah.
and Business? What's your hope? What do you hope results from this book? What's the fruit that you want to see ahead?
Yeah. I want to see leaders feel restored. I mean, I want to see leaders be able to read this and go through 90 days and feel like, man, okay, I feel restored. I feel like I can live even more intentionally than I was. Or maybe they really weren't living intentionally at all. They were totally drifting. And now they're like, okay, I've got a plan to live intentionally, to be restored, and to not wake up every day. Leadership is hard.
Yeah.
And I don't care who you're leading or who tells you what. I mean, it's not for the faint of heart. Now,
Hmm.
I do think when people say leadership is lonely, that they're kind of doing it wrong, because it's really not lonely, but it's not
Sure.
easy. So I want them to feel encouraged, and I want them to feel like, okay, here's some really great stories and really great proven things that I've learned throughout the last 90 days, that I can be restored and live a life more intentionally.
Yeah, that's good. On that note of what you just said, one of our co-founders of AVAIL, Dr. Sam Chand, he's written one of his most known books is called Leadership Pain, which I recommend as well. If you've never read that book, Leadership Pain is extraordinary. And in that book, he talks about bleedership. If you're not bleeding, you're not leading, because there's just a
Oh, that's
reality.
good.
There's just a reality of challenge that you face, and even pain that you face in leadership. However,
Yeah.
with God in your life, with the right people around you as well, you kind of get through it.
Yeah.
So here's a question that's it's going to require you, Dana, to think a little bit here. Okay. So
Okay.
I want you to think, now I remember hearing in your story that at one point you kind of took a break from college to begin in real estate and all of this, right?
Yeah.
And so my assumption is you were probably in your early 20s. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Dana, if you were able to have a 1 hour coffee with the early 20s Dana,
Ooh.
who is about to begin this journey, and you were able to just share some tips and some thoughts, what might be in that conversation regarding advice for life?
Oh, such a great question, man. Well, the first thing I will say, because at that point in my life, I was drifting. I
Mm.
mean, which probably a lot of 20-year-olds are, even 30 and 40-year-olds are sometimes. But I was definitely drifting then, and I've always been a person of faith, always been a believer, yet, um, not like when I look at who I was then, I'm like, man, she was so lost. Like, I went to church on Sundays, but still, I just was
Yeah.
lost then, and made a ton of mistakes. Oh my gosh, so many mistakes, which we won't talk about hopefully on the podcast. But no, I'm just kidding. I think the first thing I would say is just stay anchored in the truth, because if you aren't, then you drift to whatever is trending.
That's good.
And especially now in today's world, you drift to whatever is trending. And I think I would also say, run your own race, like stay out of comparison, keep the blinders on, and put your head down. I mean, that's something I've learned so much over the last decade, is like, don't pay attention to what everybody else is doing. Like, you
Good.
keep your head down, and you do. I think there's healthy way. Like, you want to in a healthy way know what your
Yeah.
competition is doing, but you don't want to obsess over what
Right.
like, I can remember in my early days of selling real estate, every week, Virgil, I would get online, I would pull the top report to see, like, on the top 100 agents in the area, what number was I? And I think I became obsessed with that, which does give you a little bit of, like, okay, a little bit of push, a little bit of drive here and there. But then it's like, you get to a point where then when you're not, or when something happens, it can affect your mindset. I actually, let me see if I can find it. I carry, yeah, okay. I actually carry this picture laminated around in my calendar, and it's actually from the Olympics. I want to say it was like the 20. Shoot, I can't remember what year it is, but it's from the Olympics, when Michael Phelps was swimming to actually win the gold medal, to be the winningest Olympian of all times.
Mm.
And it's wild, because Chad Lacoste, I think is how you say his name. He
Mhm.
was actually supposed to win. This guy was, and he was favored over Phelps. But you can see, this is right towards the end. He's actually looking. Anybody can Google this if you're not watching and you're listening. Just You
Yeah.
can Google this. It's a very famous image. But he's actually looking over his shoulder at Phelps, and Phelps won by, I think, like an 18th of a second or a
Wow.
10th of a second or something, making him the winningest Olympian of all times. But anybody that's a professional swim person would have told you that if Chad were actually looking ahead, just like the arrow dot, whatever the word is for his arms, he would have won. But instead, he was looking over his shoulder. And
Wow.
to me, like, that's a pretty powerful image and lesson around, especially for young people, young generations, and what I would tell myself in my 20s, like, run your own race, stay in your own lane.
That's so good. I love that illustration. Dana, how can people get the book? Where can they go online to connect with you or even get the resources connected to this book?
Yes, great question. Thank you for asking. So this will come out after we launch. We actually launch next week. But you can go to restoredevotional.com to pre-order. I have a ton of amazing resources and giveaways and packages that you get when you pre-order the book. Lots of great things. Interviews with some great names, a live event that we're doing, all kinds of fun stuff. And then best way to connect with me is probably Instagram, and it's Dana G. Gentry on Instagram.
That's good. You guys heard it. Restoredevotional.com. Connect with all the resources. Are there any other resources or added things connected that go along with the book?
Yes, when you pre-order, thanks to AVAIL, I have a wonderful masterclass.
Yeah.
That comes with that. It's a 14-week video series that I did around the book. So you watch one video at the beginning of each week for the 90 days. I have an amazing workbook that comes with it.
Cool.
That was created for people who buy some bigger bulk packages. They're actually going to receive a copy of the AVAIL Journal magazine that I was featured on the cover on. That has some great tips in there. I talk about the 5 lessons of generosity in the AVAIL Journal. So yeah, there's some great resources.
Love that. Love that. You guys got to lean into this. This could be a great, not only a great resource for you, but it might be a great gift for your team members, especially if you have people that are in business, that are into leadership. This could be a great devotional, a great book to just encourage them along the journey. I want to mention really quick the AVAIL Journal. You just mentioned it, Dana. Dana's on the cover of one of these. I don't have that one with me, but the AVAIL Journal is just a powerful resource for leadership, great content. If you're not subscribed, what are you waiting for? Go to availjournal.com and try our free trial subscription. You're going to enjoy it. Would you agree, Dana? That's one of the best leadership resources out there?
Man, I was blown away by the
Yeah.
AVAIL Journal. I mean, absolutely blown away.
Yep.
Martine sent me one to look at preview early on in our conversations, and it's actually the one that's right behind you with John Maxwell on the cover.
Yep.
And I was blown away. And then when the one came out that I was featured in, I was like, man, this is so good.
Yeah, it's really special. It's really special. You guys got to lean into the resources, and one of those resources is Dana's new book, Restore. You want to grab that. Dana, before we finish, I'd love to hear one final thought. What's a final nugget you want to leave us with today?
Yeah. Final nugget I would say is just keep investing in yourself. Intentionally invest in yourself. I mean, when you aren't growing, you're going backwards. Every successful person has the foundation of growth. They are learning based. Keep your faith, your foundation, and keep learning, keep leaning in and plugging away, reading books. I mean, I can't tell you how many books a year that I read. I'm sure you're the same, Virgil, but
Yeah.
Listening to podcasts like this, just stay learning based and lean in.
Yeah. Leaders are readers. You got to grow yourself. I love it. I love it. Dana, this has been a great conversation, just talking leadership, talking secular and sacred connection, talking business, talking faith. This has been encouraging. I know a lot of people are leaning in as well and just taking notes. On behalf of our co-founders, Dr. Sam Chand and Martijn van Tilburg, on behalf of the whole AVAIL team, we just want to say we're rooting for you. We're proud of you. It's great to see you pushing out your first book. I'm saying that by faith. Look, your first book.
Yes.
Yeah. Very important. Very
Well,
important.
all thanks to AVAIL. So you all have been absolutely amazing. Allison actually emailed me this week and asked for a testimonial. I'm like, absolutely. It's been my pleasure, and thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's been an honor having you. Hey, everybody, thank you for joining us for this episode of the AVAIL Podcast. For more leadership resources, check us out at theartofleadership.com. And make sure to claim your free trial subscription of the AVAIL Journal at availjournal.com. As always, I'm your AVAIL Podcast host, Virgil Sierra. Muchas gracias. Thank you for connecting with us to learn the art of leadership here on the AVAIL Podcast.